A Legal Guide to Nonprofit Funding and Taxes. Chapter 1. Nonprofit Funding, the Solicitation of Contributions. General funding abuses by nonprofits. The major source of abuse in nonprofits is in the area of soliciting charitable contributions, then pocketing the money rather than using it for its stated purpose. There are many laws that regulate the solicitation of money for charitable purposes at all levels of government, federal, state and local. See IRS Publications 526 and 557 for a basic overview, irs.gov. I've seen at least one company billing itself as a nonprofit organization, a longevity health type company who had a nice catalog with overpriced information and products who I know were really there to make a profit in the guise of helping people. So if you're smart and unscrupulous, you could set up your business as nonprofit. Be wary of nonprofits until you see some sincere benevolent actions. If you have a concept to help the world somehow as a nonprofit organization, you can start it up and do some unrelated commercial business on the side to raise money for your venture, but not so much that you're competing with for-profit businesses for the bulk of the market share while getting some kind of tax break because of your nonprofit status, plus losing sight of your real altruistic goals. You're allowed to pay yourself a reasonable salary and set up a pension plan for yourself, but if you go too far with this and give a bunch of your friends and families jobs with good salaries, somebody will squeal, a government inspector will check the situation out and could take away your nonprofit status, or worse, it could seize the corporation and file criminal charges for fraud. So your heart had better be in the right place before you start up a nonprofit. You had better not get greedy when you see the money rolling in, and you had better not create a bunch of Mickey Mouse jobs for your family members to earn big salaries for doing barely nothing. In order to be exempt under the tax laws, you have to follow the rules. If you go outside these rules, you may have to pay taxes on some of your income, pay penalties, or lose your exemption entirely. The IRS is getting wise to companies that claim to be there to help people but are really there to make money. I've seen one case of a company purporting to help people with aging and longevity issues with a magazine that was allegedly non-profit, but they were really just a for-profit company trying to sell their overpriced vitamins, books, and other information for what I thought were outrageous prices for a non-profit. You'd think a non-profit would post its list of alternative medical clinics on their websites for free, or maybe charge $1 or $2 for it, but these people wanted $10 for it. It didn't ring true with me. I felt like calling the IRS on them for posing as something they weren't, but I didn't. They're probably still in business, posing as a nonprofit while raking in the money selling information they should be giving away by virtue of being a nonprofit. I heard another one on the news where a guy started a nonprofit that suspiciously sounded very similar to the name of a prominent organization that helps children, collected a bunch of money through solicitations, etc. And when all was said and done, his alleged expenses, car, office, computer, salaries, etc., ate up over 98% of the money. He only used a few $100s of thousands to help poor kids. The article ended saying go to bbb.org to get the basics on scam nonprofits. It's all right to make money as a nonprofit, then use it to advance your purpose, but be crystal clear on how you're earning it, and if it falls within the parameters of unfair advantage, then split that part off from your main nonprofit corporation, make it a regular for-profit company, pay taxes on it and keep it legal. This is what the Smithsonian did with smithsonianstour.com. You need a tight rein on your money with a nonprofit, firstly to satisfy the tax man that you're above board, and secondly, it's relatively common for your volunteers and workers to dip into the funds when they see all those cash contributions come in. Develop airtight financial management such that not just one lone person has control of incoming contributions and can pocket anything they want. Make a rule like all incoming contributions must be opened, if sent by mail, or counted, if collected at an event, by at least 2 specific employees who must be present. Try to make it so that these 2 people don't really like each other, so they can't pair up and steal the whole show. The reason I'm saying all this is because of my involvement with nonprofits during my youth. I saw theft and was tempted to steal myself when I had access to a bunch of donated cash which nobody had a clue as to the exact amount of. It would have been so easy. Everybody is only human. In the presence of cash which nobody would specifically miss, the temptation is great. The private inurement doctrine states that private parties cannot reap undue profits from a non-profit organization. The funds and benefits of a non-profit corporation cannot go to any particular people but must be used for the approved business of the organization. You can get a reasonable paycheck but not an inflated one. You can't use a non-profit corp as a tax dodge while you conduct personal business for profit. Business dealings are allowed, but if you come off like a wheeler dealer, that's suspicious since it's supposed to be all about your cause, not making business deals. The concept of excess benefits transactions states that through its legitimate business dealings, the non-profit corp must not give excess profits to private individuals. Non-profit corporations are allowed to hire employees, rent property, and pay for services, but they all must be reasonable and not excessive or exorbitant. The salary must not exceed normal community standards. Rent must be fair market rent, and service work must not be overpriced compared to others who provide the same services. You can't just hire your brothers in dummy jobs and pay them each $200,000 a year. You can't rent an office from your wife for $10,000 a month or pay your brother $5,000 a month to clean your little office. If your brother owns a building and rents you a few offices for an exorbitant fee, this is not fair and reasonable and will raise suspicion in an audit. Some non-profits get away with extravagant excesses until some good investigative journalist exposes them. The government is cracking down on fraudulent non-profits as it should, since nothing irks the public citizens more than a sham charity soliciting donations so their fat cat administrators can live the good life and only put a few bucks in to help their alleged cause, all the while calling themselves a charity. Businesses complain that they cannot compete with tax-exempt organizations that are in the same business, so there are very strict rules regarding the types of commercial activities that non-profits can engage in that can be very easily abused. If a non-profit engages in a business venture that is unrelated to its purpose, the profits from that venture are taxable. Not disclosing this or having too much taxable income could lead to a loss of tax-exempt status. If one of your operations becomes too profitable, the best course of action to take to avoid losing your tax-exempt status is to spin it off into an independent for-profit subsidiary. Try not to have business dealings with the insiders in your nonprofit, i.e., give them independent business contracts, because there are rules against it. Protect yourself by keeping good records. Beware of nepotism, bringing your family in to fill a bunch of work slots. In order to protect yourself legally, keep everything out in the open. State rules for the solicitation of contributions. Most states have a state law regarding the solicitation of contributions by nonprofit corporations. If you plan to do charitable solicitation, in most states but not all, you will need to obtain information on any registration requirements from the State Attorney General's Office or the Consumer Protection Office. Currently, the following states do not have registration requirements for statewide charitable soliciting: Delaware, Hawaii, Idaho, telephone solicitors are regulated. Indiana, Iowa, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, South Dakota, Texas, Vermont, Wyoming. If you plan a national campaign to solicit money, you will need to know the laws of all 50 states and abide by them. There is currently a uniform registration form/URF that is slowly being adapted by most of the states. As of now, the following states accept the URF: Alabama, Arkansas, California, Connecticut, District of Columbia, Georgia, Illinois, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, Wisconsin. Charitable solicitations also fall under the jurisdiction of consumer protection offices in some cities. If you are conducting a local fundraising campaign, you should check with the City Attorney General or Consumer Protection Office to see if you are following all the rules. RAFA.com, State Requirements for Charitable Solicitations. U.S. State Solicitation of Contributions Laws. Alabama. Attorney General. Consumer Protection Division. 115. Union Street, Montgomery, Alabama 36130. 334-242-7300. Alabama Code 13A9-70, ET Sec. Alaska. Department of Law, Civil Division. Fair Business Practices Section. POB 110300. Juneau, Alaska 99811-0300. 907-269-5100. Alaska Statutes, Title 45, Chapter. Arizona. Secretary of State. 1700 West Washington, 7th floor. Phoenix, Arizona 85007-2888. 602-542-4285. sos.state.az.us. Arizona Revised Statutes, Sections 44 to 1522. 44 to 655 1 ET Sec. Arkansas. Office of the Attorney General. Consumer Protection Division. 323 Center Street, Number 200. Little Rock, Arkansas 72201. 501-682-2341. ARC Code N.4-28-406. California. Registry of Charitable Trust. POB 903447. Sacramento, California 94203-4470. 916-445-2021. California Government Code 12580 to 12596. California Code of Regulations, Title 11, 300. 310, 999.1 to 999.4. Business and Professor Code Seconds. 17,510 to 17,510.85, 22,930. California Corporation Code, Sector 5223-5250. Colorado. Secretary of State. 1560 Broadway, Number 200. Denver, Colorado 80202. 303-894-2251. Revised Statutes, Title 6, Article 16. Connecticut. Attorney General. Public Charities Unit. POB 7120. Hartford, CT 06141-0120. 860-808-5318. Connecticut General Statutes 21A190A, ET. Sec. Delaware. Attorney General. Civil Division. 820 N. French St. Wilmington, Delaware 19801. 302-577-8400. There are no state registration requirements for the solicitation of charitable contributions by nonprofit corporations. District of Columbia. Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. 941 North Capoital St. N.E. Washington, D.C. 20002. 202-282-3272. D.C. Code 2 to 711 1981 ed. Florida. Department of Agriculture. Division of Consumer Services. 407 S. Calhoun Street, Mayo Building, Tallahassee, Florida 32399-0800. 904-488-2221. Florida Statutes, Chapter 6. Georgia. Secretary of State. Business Services and Regulation. 2 Martin Luther King Drive Southeast. Number 315, West Tower. Atlanta, Georgia 30334. 404-656-2817. O.CGA.43-17-1, ET-Sec. Hawaii. Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. POB 3469. Honolulu, Hawaii 96801. 808-586-2744. Hawaii Statutes, Chapter 7B Solicitation of Funds from the Public. There are no state registration requirements for the solicitation of charitable contributions by nonprofit corporations. Idaho. State of Idaho. Office of Attorney General. 700 West Jefferson St. POB 83720. Boise, Idaho 83720. 208-334-2400. Idaho Statutes, Title 48, Chapter 10 and 12, Charitable Solicitation Act, Telephone Solicitation Act. There are no state registration requirements for the solicitation of charitable contributions by nonprofit corporations. Illinois. Illinois Attorney General. Charitable Trusts Bureau. 100 West Randolph, 3rd floor. Chicago, Illinois 60601-3175. 312-814-2595. 760 ILCS 55/1, 225 ILCS 460/1. Indiana. Office of Indiana Attorney General. Consumer Protection Division. Indiana Government Center South. 5th floor. 402 West Washington St. Indianapolis, Indiana 46204-2770. 317-232-6330. Indiana Code 23-7, Chapter. There are no state registration requirements for the solicitation of charitable contributions by nonprofit corporations. Iowa. Attorney General. Consumer Protection Division. Hoover State Building. 1305 East Walnut. Des Moines, Iowa 503-19515-281-5926. Code of Iowa, Chapter 13C. There are no state registration requirements for the solicitation of charitable contributions by nonprofit corporations. Kansas. Secretary of State. Corporate Division. 1 St. Floor, Memorial Hall. 120 S.W.10 Th Ave. Topeka, Kansas 66612. 785-296-7456. KSA 17-1760 ET-Sec. Kentucky. Attorney General. Division of Consumer Protection. POB 2000. Frankfort, Kentucky 40602-2000. 502-573-2200. Kentucky Revised Statutes 367.650. Louisiana. Attorney General. Consumer Protection Division. POB 94095. Baton Rouge, Louisiana 70804-0201. 225-342-7900. Louisiana Revised Statutes .51:1901-1904. Maine. Department of Professional and Financial Regulation. 35 State House Station. Augusta, Maine 04333. 207-624-8500. 9 Maine Revised Statutes Annotated, Seconds. 5001-5016. Maryland. Office of Secretary of State. Charitable Organization Division. State House. Annapolis, Maryland 21401. 410-974-5534. Annotated Code of Maryland, Business Reg Act. Sector 6-101, ET Sec. Massachusetts. Attorney General. Division of Public Charities. 1 Ashburton Place. Boston, Massachusetts 02108. 617-727-2200. Massachusetts General Laws, Chapters 12 and 68. Michigan. Attorney General. Charitable Trust Section. POB 30214. Lansing, Michigan 48909. 517-373-1152. MCLA 400.271. Minnesota. Attorney General. Charities Division. NCL Tower. Number 1200. 445 Minnesota Street. St. Paul, MN 55101-213 612-296-6172. Minnesota Statutes, Chapter 9. Mississippi. Secretary of State. POB 136. Jackson, Mississippi 39205-0136. 601-359-6357. Mississippi Code Annotated Sector 79-11-501. ET Sec. Missouri. Attorney General. 211 West High Street. Jefferson, Missouri 65101. 314-751-3321. Missouri Revised Statutes, Sector 407.450, ET. Sec. Montana. Secretary of State. Room 225. Capitol Station. Helena, Montana 59620. 406-444-3665. Revised Statutes of Montana 35-2-118. Nebraska. Secretary of State. 2300 Stat and Capital. Lincoln, Nebraska 68509. 402-471-2554. Statutes 28-1447-1449. Nevada. Secretary of State. Capitol Complex. Carson City, Nevada 89710. 702-687-5203. Nevada Revised Statutes, Chapter 8. Statutes of Nevada 1997, Chapter 2. There are no state registration requirements for the solicitation of charitable contributions by nonprofit corporations. New Hampshire. Attorney General. Charitable Trust Division. 33 Capitol Street. Concord, New Hampshire 03301-6397. 603-271-3591. Revised Statutes Annotated 719. New Jersey. Charities Registration Section. POB 45021. Newark, New Jersey 07101. 201-504-6259. New Jersey Statutes 45:17a, ET Sec. New Mexico. Office of the Attorney General. Charitable Organization Registry. P.O. Drawer 1508. Santa Fe, New Mexico 87504-1508. 505-827-6000. New Mexico Statutes Annotated, 22:57-22-1, ET Sec. New York. Office of the Attorney General. Charities Bureau. 120 Broadway. New York, New York 10271. 212-416-8400. Art 7A, Executive Law. North Carolina. Solicitation Licensing Branch. 701 Balber Drive. POG 29530. Raleigh, North Carolina 27603. 919-733-5000. 4510. North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 131F. North Dakota. Secretary of State. State Capitol Building. Bismarck, North Dakota, 58505. 701-224-2905. Chapter-22, North Dakota Century Code. Ohio. Attorney General. Charitable Foundation Section. 101 E. Town Street. 4th floor. Columbus, Ohio, 43266-0900. 614-466-3180. Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 1716. Oklahoma. Attorney General. 4545 N. Lincoln Boulevard. Number 250. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73105-3498. 405-521-4274. OS. Title 18:552, ET Sec. Oregon. Attorney General. Administrator of Charitable Trusts. 1515 S.W.5 Th Avenue. Number 410. Portland, Oregon, 97201. 503-229-5548. Oregon Revised Statutes 128.610 to 129. Pennsylvania. Department of State. Bureau of Charitable Organizations. POB 8723. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, 17150. 717-783-1720. 10 PA 5.162.1 ET Sec. Rhode Island. Department of Business Regulations. Charitable Organization Section. 233 Richmond Street. Number 232. Providence, Rhode Island, 02903-4232. 401-277-3048. R.I.G.L. Title 5, Chapter 3. South Carolina. Secretary of State. Director of Public Charities. POB 11350. Columbia, South Carolina, 29211. 803-734-2168. South Carolina Code 33-56-10. South Dakota. Attorney General. State Capitol. 500 East Capitol. Pierre, South Dakota, 57501-5070. 605-773-4400. South Dakota Codified Laws, Title 37, Chapter, regulates solicitation of charitable contributions by telephone. Tennessee. Secretary of State. James K. Polk Building. Number 500. Nashville, Tennessee, 37243-0308. 615-741-2555. TCA 48-101-501 ET Sec. Texas. Attorney General. Charitable Trust Section. POB 12548. Austin, Texas, 78711. 512-463-2185. No statewide statute, solicitation of charitable contributions is regulated by municipalities. Utah. Department of Commerce. Division of Consumer Protection. POB 45802. Salt Lake City, Utah, 84145-0802. 801-530-6601. Utah Code, Title 13, Chapter 2, Section 1-22. Vermont. Attorney General. Pavilion Office Building. Montpelier, Vermont, 05602. 802-828-3171. Vermont Statutes, Chapter 3, Title 9, Section 2471, ET Sec. Virginia. Division of Consumer Affairs. epub 1163. Richmond, Virginia 23209. 804-786-1343. Code of Virginia 57-48 to 57 to 69. Washington. Office of the Secretary of State. Corporations Division. epub 40234. Olympia, WA 98504-02234. 360-753-0863. RCW Chapter 19.09 ET Sec. West Virginia. Attorney General. Consumer Protection Division. epub 1789. Charleston, West Virginia 25326-1789. 304-558-8986. West Virginia Code, Chapter, Art.19. Wisconsin. Department of Regulations and Licensing. epub 8935. Madison, Wisconsin 53708. 608-266-0829. Wisconsin Statutes, Chapter 40, Subchapter. Wyoming. Secretary of State. Capitol Building. 200 W.24 THST. Cheyenne, Wyoming 82002. 307-777-7378. Wyoming Statutes 17-19-1501. There are no state registration requirements for the solicitation of charitable contributions by nonprofit corporations. Chapter 2 Nonprofits and Taxes. The IRS and the nonprofit. Basically, the laws to nonprofit corporations are state laws, the laws for tax-exempt status are federal, irs.gov/charities. First, you must qualify under state law as a nonprofit organization, then you can qualify federally for tax-exempt status. Once you receive a federal tax exemption, you can apply for certain state tax exemptions. Before forming your nonprofit corporation, you should develop a clear picture of your purpose and goals, then look at IRS rules so that you can fit your nonprofit to meet their standards of the tax-exempt Section 501(c)(3) organization if at all possible, because this is generally considered to be the best category. People who contribute money to you will be able to deduct it on their taxes, which is a big incentive to give. There are a number of rules and options regarding the IRS and nonprofits, all of which make it seem like a confusing venture, but if you just go along a little at a time, you will learn as you live. Charitable vs. non-charitable. There are two legal meanings for the word charitable. 1. A group that aids the poor. 2. The IRS definition that includes all organizations that can accept tax-deductible contributions, which are those classified as Section 501(c)(3) corporations under the Internal Revenue Code. Public charity vs. private foundation. If you are qualify as a charitable organization under Section 501(c)(3, you must then determine whether your organization will be a public charity or a private foundation. There are many more rules for private foundation status than for public charity status. In order to be classified as a public charity, you must either qualify automatically, are a certain type of organization, pass the public support test, get a certain amount of funding from the public, pass the facts and circumstances test, get some funding from the public, and meet some other criteria. These are all spelled out in IRS publication 557. If you don't qualify as a public charity, you're classified as a private foundation, which has a number of rules to go with it, which you can read about in IRS publication 557. The law is always changing in this area, so contact the IRS at irs.gov and ask for the latest information regarding nonprofit corporations. The current IRS forms for nonprofits are Form 990 and Form 990T. Get IRS forms and booklets at 800-829-040 or irs.gov. You will need Package 1023, Application for Recognition of Exemption under Section 501(c)(3). Package 1024, Application for Recognition of Exemption under Sections other than Section 501, c. 3. Publication 526, Charitable Contributions. Publication 557, Tax-exempt status for your organization. Publication 561, Determining the value of donated property. Publication 598, Tax on unrelated business income. Most non-profit corporations file IRS Form 990. If the income is below $100,000 and assets are below $250,000, you can file Form 990-EZ. If the income is less than $25,000 or the nonprofit is a church, school, or related organization, you may be exempt from filing. If the organization is a private foundation or has unrelated business income, check out Form 990P for 990T. If you make a political contribution of over $100, you must file Form 1120-POL. Nonprofits and tax-exempt status in the United States. Most American nonprofits are recognized by the IRS as tax-exempt, defined by Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. Being tax-exempt means that the NGO does not have to pay corporate income taxes on money it makes through fundraising and whatever else it does to earn money. Employees pay personal income taxes on wages. If an NGO has IRS tax-exempt status, people who donate to it can deduct the contribution when they do their own personal income tax returns. This works for foundations who give out money too. Non-profits have to qualify for tax-exempt status year by year through a yearly report. They can't take profits out. No employees or contractors can be paid excessively for the work they do for the non-profit. Non-profits are not allowed to do anything that directly affects the outcome of an election for public office. There are a lot of records to keep. There are other classifications of tax-exempt organizations in the Internal Revenue Code that cover a diverse range of organizations, including labor unions, credit unions, membership groups, political action committees, advocacy groups, retirement funds, chambers of commerce, etc. Some of the classifications are as follows. The nonprofit. The nonprofit for-profit. The nonprofit government public sector. For-profit, nonprofit slant. Non-governmental, independent, philanthropic advocacy. Lobbying. The political rules for 501c3 organizations are as follows. 1. There are no restrictions on advocacy. 2. A 501c3 can only lobby so much based on a formula that is based on its revenues, how much money it takes in. 3. 501c3s cannot do anything that directly influence the election of an individual to public office. This is called electioneering. It takes a lot of government paperwork to run a nonprofit. Some people don't bother starting nonprofits. They start a real business that doesn't happen to focus on profit in order to minimize paperwork. Nonprofit tax websites /IRS info on nonprofits. irs.gov/charities/index.html, tax information for charities and other nonprofits. irs.gov/charities irs.gov/charities/article/0, ID =96136,00.html, recognized charities. irs.gov/charities/article/0, ID =2497667,00.html, exempt organizations select check. irs.gov/charities/charitable/article/0, ID =205635000.html, recent revocations of 501(c)(3) determinations. irs.gov/charities-non-profits. irs.gov/charities. wiley.com/wileycda/wiley-title/product CD-0471738360.html, the tax law of unrelated business for nonprofit organizations. Tax-exempt status. Even though the IRS recognizes 32 different kinds of tax-exempt organizations, the most common type is the 501(c)(3) 3, which is either a private foundation or a public charity, with the word charity conforming to their definition, which generally means religious, charitable, relieving poverty, beautifying the community, lessening the burdens of government, promoting health, promoting social welfare, promoting environmental conservation, promoting the arts, promoting patriotism, promoting amateur sports, scientific research for the public good, testing consumer goods for the public safety, literary organizations, educational organizations, preventing cruelty to children or animals, building or maintaining buildings for public use, monument erection, helping the community, alleviating violence, reduce prejudice and discrimination, protect human and civil rights, help children. A 501(c)(3) nonprofit is supposed to have a narrowly defined, specific vision that should not fit into any more than one of the above categories. By law, a 501(c)(3) nonprofit must be dedicated to doing good works out of the goodness of their hearts, not for a profit. Even when the organization is dissolved, the money it has is supposed to go to some entity to do the public good rather than in the pockets of the directors. If you want to avoid taxes, get a copy of sections 501 to 514 of the IRS Code, which describes who qualifies for exemptions and immunities. The laws are quite complicated. Check out the Internal Revenue Code of the IRS, 501A, 501C3, 502, 502A, 511, 511A2, 512, 513, to see the conditions necessary to attain exempt status. Section 501(c) describes 23 categories of organizations which have some tax exemption privileges. Beyond the charitable-oriented tax-exempt organizations in Section 501(c)(3), some of the tax-exempt organizations in other categories are as follows: Civic and Social Welfare Associations, 501(c)(4). Employee Associations, 501(c)(4). Labor Organizations, 501(c)(5). Trade Associations, 501(c)(6). Social Clubs, 501(c)(7). Cemeteries, 501(c)(13). Veterans Organizations, 501(c)(19). Although many organizations can get tax-exempt status, only religious organizations are exempt from disclosure. Get a copy of IRS Pamphlet 557, Tax-Exempt Status for Your Organization. The tax forms of all nonprofit corporations are available for public viewing at irs.gov. Expect a wait of at least a year after the returns are filed before they're posted. If you can qualify as an educational, religious, or charitable organization, that could be your ticket out of the tax scene while pocketing all the money you take in. You'd still have to pay taxes on any salary you get from the organization. Under federal law, a nonprofit organization must pass 2 tests to qualify as tax-exempt status. An organizational test. An operational test. For the organizational test, the organization must have a written charter which reflects the altruistic philosophy and a statement saying that upon dissolution of the organization, the assets will be distributed to another entity related to their cause, whatever it may be. The operational test is merely a check to see that they do what they purport to do in their charter. If you're a non-profit organization and as part of that organization, you create an unrelated business to generate money for yourself, under the Unrelated Income Rules Statutes IRC 513-2(b), you can't be given an unfair advantage over for-profit corporations selling similar items or services by not paying taxes, so these side businesses are not exempt from paying taxes. You can lose your tax-exempt status for a variety of reasons, the most important one being if the owners use a lot of the money for their own personal use, and in general if you engage in more than 20% of your income from your unrelated business ventures which aren't intrinsically related to your cause. If you operate a side business within your nonprofit organization, for instance, a snack bar at a hospital which is there to support the hospital achieving its function, not necessarily to make money to finance your altruistic actions. That's fine, but if you cross the line and operate too many of these side businesses or one big one to make money, you could lose your tax-exempt status and face trouble from the government. One way to deal with business activities in your nonprofit that cross the line is to simply start a second company, a subsidiary that pays taxes, and keep it separate from your main nonprofit body. It's all quite tedious and complex. Before you decide to embark on a quest to start a nonprofit organization, I urge you to get a copy of the IRS code and read up on the relevant sections, then either get a legal book on nonprofit corporations or talk to a lawyer about the rules involved. Proceed with your unrelated income as you would proceed with any for-profit commercial business. Plan it out, try to get financing, either loans, donations, etc. And try to make a profit that you can use to achieve your nonprofit benevolent goal. It's the same story. IRS categories of tax-exempt organizations. 501(c)(l), corporations organized under acts of Congress, including federal credit unions, not required to fill out a tax form. 50(l)(c)(2), title holding corporation for an exempt organization, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(3), religious, educational, charitable, scientific, literary, public safety, sports, cruelty prevention organizations, IRS Form 990, 990EZOR990PF. 501(c)(4), civic leagues, social welfare organizations, and local associations of employees, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(5), labor, agricultural, and horticultural organizations, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(6), business leagues, chambers of commerce, real estate boards, etc., IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(7), social and recreation clubs, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(8), fraternal beneficiary societies and associations, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(9), volunteer employees beneficiaries associations, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(10), domestic fraternal societies and associations, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(11), teachers retirement fund associations, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(12), benevolent life insurance associations, mutual ditch or irrigation companies, mutual or cooperative telephone companies, etc., IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(13), cemetery companies, conducting burials and related activities, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(14), state chartered credit unions, mutual reserve funds, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(15), mutual insurance companies or associations, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(16), cooperative organizations to finance crop operations, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(17), supplemental unemployment benefit trusts, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(18), employee-funded pension trust, created before June 25, 1959, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(19), post of organization of past or present members of the armed forces, IRS Form 990-R990EZ. 501(c)(20), group legal services plan organizations, no IRS forms. 501(c)(21), 21, Black Lung Benefit Trusts, IRS Form 990-BL. 501, c. 22, Withdrawal Liability Payment Fund, IRS Form 990-R990-EZ. 501, c. 23, Veterans Organizations, created before 1880, IRS Form 990-R990-EZ. 501, c. 25, Title Holding Corporation or Trusts with Multiple Parents, IRS Form 990-R990-EZ. 501, c. 26, State-Sponsored Organization Providing Health Coverage for High-Risk Individuals, IRS Form 990-R990-EZ. 501, c. 27, State-Sponsored Workers' Compensation Reinsurance Organization, IRS Form 990-R990-EZ. 501, d. Religious and Apostolic Associations, IRS Form 1065. 501, e. Cooperative Hospital Service Organizations, IRS Form 990-R990-EZ. 501, f. Cooperative Service Organizations or Operating Educational Organizations, IRS Form 990-R990-EZ. 501, k. Child Care Organization, IRS Form 990-R990-EZ. 501, n. Charitable Risk Pools, IRS Form 990-R990-EZ. 521, a. Farmers Cooperative Associations, IRS Form 990-C. State Tax Exemptions. Since you're applying to your state corporation office as a nonprofit and presumably have been recognized as a nonprofit by the IRS, they will exempt you from state income taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, and other taxes. Check with your State Department of Revenue, Tax Office, to find out the exact laws in your area.